Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. The last one we did some minor side stuff before heading up Death Mountain, and now we're in the second major dungeon of the game, the Fire Temple. Yo, Darunia, been a while. Who's there? Is that you, Link? Oh, it really is Link. You've grown so big since I last saw you. I want to have a man-to-man talk with you, but now is not the time. Ganondorf is causing trouble on Death Mountain again. He has revived the evil ancient dragon Volvagia. On top of that, he's going to feed my people to that evil dragon as a warning to other races that might resist him. If that fire-breathing dragon escapes from the mountain, all of Hyrule will become a burning wasteland. I will go on ahead and try to seal up the evil dragon. I'm concerned, though, because I don't have the legendary hammer. But I have no choice. Link, I'm asking you to do this as my sworn brother. Well, I'm trying to deal with the dragon. Please save my people. The prisoner cells are in the opposite direction. I'm counting on you, Link. So why didn't Saria show up in the Forest Temple at all? That's one of the few times that doesn't actively happen in the game. Now, the main gimmick of the Fire Temple is that there are Gorons we have to rescue all over the place, and the first one is right here. Press the floor switch, the cell opens, and then we can talk to them. Are you releasing me? Am I free to go? I'll tell you a secret for saving me. In order to get into the room where Darunia went, you have to do something about the pillar stuck in the ceiling. Find a path that leads to a room above the ceiling right away. And that is our end goal, is to get that pillar down. But first off, we also want to open this chest, as every Goron cell also contains a small key. If I'm recalling correctly, every small key in the dungeon is gotten through this manner. That's the pillar in question, by the way. So the main gimmick and setup of this dungeon is to go from room to room, finding as many Gorons and rescuing them as you can, and then getting the key from their cell. With that said, we actually will be returning to that pathway for a while. We want to head to this opposite direction that Darunia told us to go in. Being the Fire Temple, there are going to be some rooms like this, though, that I believe are superheated, and thus you'll have a timer going on unless you have the Goron tunic on. Again, though, if you have it, you really should never take it off in here anyway. Barring one occasion, sort of. More on that in a few moments. Now, the lava here acts like the lava in Dodongo's Cavern, in that you can step in it and you will take damage, but it's more of a gradual damage rather than instantaneous. You'll lose a heart and a half or something like that. We want to drop a bomb right here, though, as we can blow open this secret passageway. They Goron after this one that I get hints towards this, because in here is yet another Goron. Are you releasing me? Am I free to go? I'll tell you a secret for saving me. There are switches in this temple that you have to cut to activate, but you can also use the Goron's special crop to do the job, so bombs can hit switches as well as your sword. Notably, you don't have to actually talk to the Gorons, you can just get the key and leave. In fact, there's one instance where I forget to talk to a Goron before leaving the room, and thus they despawn by the time I get back there. More on that towards the end of the video. But you don't have to actually talk to them. Now, I know for a fact I've mentioned that I'm playing the N64 version of the game before, but one thing I haven't quite talked about is that I'm specifically playing version 1.0, as keener-eared viewers may have already noticed just based off the song in the Fire Temple. In versions 1.0 and 1.1 of the game, the Fire Temple theme is completely different than 1.2 onwards, containing religious chanting from the Muslim faith, some lines even translating along the lines of, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah. In future changes, they removed this and changed it into a song that's a remix of the 4th Dungeon's theme with Gregorian chanting in the background. Are you releasing me? Am I free to go? Here's a secret for saving me. A wall that you can destroy with the Goron's special crop will sound different than a regular wall if you hit it with your sword. Before I get back into that topic, as that Goron just brought up, if you swing your sword at any wall in the game, it makes a very distinctive thwack sound. But if a wall is destructible by bombs, it makes a noticeably higher pitched sound. I'll show that off later in this dungeon if I recall correctly. That is just one of the various changes from 1.0 to 1.1 into 1.2, though. There's various graphical updates. Certain blood was changed from red to green. The N64 logo was cleaned up. Certain glitches were fixed. Certain resolution changes were made. Spelling errors and grammatical errors fixed, such as extra spaces. There's all sorts of differences from 1.1 into 1.0, or vice versa, rather. Growing up, I think I had version 1.2, but my current copy, I think, is version 1.1, as I think 1.0 is mostly just the gold cartridges and some gray cartridges. I know there's a way to tech. In fact, you know what? I'm going to do that in a moment once I talk about this room. In this room, we have the attacking floor tile straight out of Link to the Past. And in the distance, you might see there is a gold sculpture on the wall, but there's also that pulsating mass of mass. That is a a classic Zelda enemy. They are very odd in this game, though, in that they're partially invincible when they're trying to suck you up. And if they do suck you up, it'll eat your shield or your tunic, sometimes randomly, usually one or the other. However, if you kill it fast enough, you can get your shield and tunic back. However, you might see, even in trying to shoot it, its vulnerability periods are odd. Sometimes the arrows will bounce right off of them, sometimes it won't. Sometimes the hitbox is directly at, the base of it, sometimes it's not. Like collision in this game is weird, but they're always rewarding to fight, as they usually drop between 15 to 25 rupees. Let's see here, though. Okay, here it is. Here is my copy of Ocarina of Time. Front label's a lot more busted than I remember. On the back, it says 19A. 1.1 is XXA, so I have version 1.1. So that means I can't do certain glitches. I still have this Fire Temple theme. And I think there's just certain animation fixes in general. Overall, if you're playing casually, there's no real difference beyond the music thing and some of the graphical changes. If you're a speedrunner, though, you definitively want version 1.2, 1.1.0 rather, because Swordless Link is a thing you can do in that. This is one of the few times they ever dipped into something like this, too. And don't get me wrong, I understand why they changed some of this stuff. Particularly, you may have noticed the symbol on most of the blocks is different in the GameCube version onwards. I'll go more into that when we get towards the 5th temple, when it's more visually relevant. But there are definitive reasons they changed some of these things. I'll be real, though, I prefer this song to the remix of the 4th dungeon's, 4th temple's theme they made it in here from version 1.2 onwards. It just feels more atmospherically appropriate, I suppose is the way I want to call it. It feels more like an area, a song that would fit in this area compared to the other song. With that said, the new song isn't bad either. I think they both fit the area. I just prefer the sound of this one, I guess, at the end of the day. Also, we got fire slugs here. These things are weird. When they're on fire, I think their HP is technically invincible. But once you take out their fire, they go down with 1 or 2 slices. Now, that switch over there is the one that Goron brought up. This is the standard switch we're going to be seeing essentially in every dungeon moving forward, more or less. If you hit it with a bomb, a hookshot, an arrow, or your sword, it'll activate, doing whatever each switch does individually. That one, for instance, will put the fire at the top of this structure out for a limited time. The reason that Goron brought up using bombs is that you can bomb it from the top, or at least the second layer of the area, and then climb the fire before it starts back up. Or you could be like me, as I do when I get up there, and try to bomb it by throwing a bomb on top of it, and then just being right next to the fire when it triggers the switch. Switches are going to be very common from now on, usually with sometimes strict timing, sometimes not so strict timing. There are seldom switches that are just, you hit it once and it's permanently on. Usually, if there are, it's ones that raise the iron bars in some doors, and those are mostly only in the 5th temple. We'll get to that when the time comes, though. For now, we just need to make sure we nail the shot. It's weird. Despite being, in some regards, the most visually boring out of all the 5 major temples, considering it's just a cave with some classic temple aesthetics going on, I feel like this might be my favorite dungeon in the game. It's either this or the 5th temple. There's just something about the puzzle solving here and the way the map curls around on itself that just feels very satisfying. Also, be careful in this room. There's a bunch of rolling boulders that'll hit you for at least like half a heart, I think, in damage. This is also one of the few rooms in the game that's just outright 2 stories. And we want to get to the top one first. But first off, I want to slice around here. That is the higher pitch sound that the walls you can blow up make. And of course, this one's hiding a gold sculpture, which I will take because I like getting them all. This is probably the dungeon where you're more than the room in the dungeon rather, where you're more than likely to miss a Goron, as there's a lot of hidden pathways that might just be right out of sight if you're not paying attention. Or not looking in the right place, even. Are you releasing me? Am I free to go? Let me tell you a secret as a reward for releasing me. When you're on fire, you can put it out by swinging your sword or by rolling forward. Did you know that? Yeah, I suppose that's the thing I haven't really mentioned. There is some amount of environmental damage in this game. There is, like, you can be lit on fire by the fire slugs, and I think the fire stays on you and you take some damage for a while unless you put it out. And you could do it, but like he said, either by swinging your sword or rolling forward. I'll be real, though, I think the last time that happened to me was in high school. It's a very rare thing to get hit as long as you keep some distance from the enemies around you. Unlike the boulders, which are really fast at moving for some reason. And here's the next Goron. Whoa, you can see into the void there. Are you releasing me? Am I free to go? I'll tell you a secret for saving me. In this temple, there are doors that fall down when you try to open them. When one of these doors starts to fall, move. If you use a sample of the Goron's special crop, you can break it. That is a new enemy that we'll start seeing in this dungeon called a fake door, though I don't think we're going to start seeing one until next part. They are fake doors that if you try to open them, will fall right on top of you. There is some time to get out of the way before it happens, but there's an easy way to spot them. If you've been paying attention to the doors throughout the game, like the one I'm about to go up to, which is locked up here on the left, the doors in the game are natively set into the wall. A fake door can be told apart because it's right up against the wall. So if you keep that simple trick in mind, you shouldn't really get hit by one. Also, we want to walk carefully here, as if we fall down, we're sent back to the room with the first fake door. The room right next to the starting room, essentially, with all the fire and the lava. And I don't want to fall down, so let's be careful here, okay? Before we progress through the locked door, though, we want to come over here, as this is where we can get the next major item for the dungeon. This is going to be where we get the map. And this is arguably the dungeon where the map is the second most helpful, as the areas in this place do warp and cross all over each other. With that said, I also really like the setup of this dungeon, because it's essentially set up like two giant pillars. Even though it seldom comes into play, I just really like the way that kind of design feels. Now we want to come over to the right and open this door. And in this next room, we got a bit of an odd hazard. There is going to be a fire that follows us across this entire room. With that said, I've never seen what happens if it catches up to you. I imagine it just clips through you and continues moving and you're safe to go. I imagine it's not a void out. It's probably just damage and then you're good. With that said, if I've ever gotten hit by it, it was years ago and I don't remember, because the fire is really slow. So I don't know. And now we're back in the rolling rock room, but now we're on the top floor a bit. And this is where I mess up with talking to all the Gorons. There is a floor switch just across the way. You can actually see it on screen right now towards the right side. And when you step on that, it's going to open a cell on the far southern end of this room, I believe. However, since I go down to get another Goron before talking to that Goron, I miss out on what that Goron says. With that said, if I'm recalling which Goron that is correctly, that one says something along the lines of to play the Ocarina and a specific song on it if you find yourself unable to progress further in a room. Particularly shouting out the Song of Time or Scarecrow song, should you have it. Even though, yeah, I know those are the only two songs you can use for actual progression. And it's all because I came down here to get this Goron first. Whoops. Oh well, at least I think I remember the hint correctly. Are you releasing me? Am I free to go? Here's a tip for rescuing me. Somewhere in this temple, you're sure to meet up with some creatures that dance as they attack. Arrows won't hurt them. Looks like you might need some of the Goron's special crop. That's all I have to tell you. So use the bombs on the quote-unquote mini-boss, I guess. I guess a bit of a weird thing about Ocarina of Time in particular is that it's relatively lacking in mini-bosses. Like, the Goma Larva aren't mini-bosses. Liz Alphos in Dodongo's Cavern, sure. The tails in Jabu-Jabu, maybe? I guess you can count. Yeah, no, I'll count the Poe sisters, though they're all the exact same fight just 4 times in a row. This, I guess, has some... the next dungeon, not really. Actually, I can't even think of a single thing I can... No, actually, no, the next one is the one that just outright has one for once. Temple 4... Not really, at least nothing unique. Temple 5 does, so like 2, maybe 3 dungeons have outright mini-bosses in this game, which is a bit unusual. As moving forward, every Zelda game tried to have a unique mini-boss of some sort. And I really like that because it gives the dungeon more memory, or at least more memorability, rather. Like, the Zelda games all had that one mini-boss, or like the handheld ones all had that one mini-boss you fought to get usually the dungeon item, or the halfway point, and they were usually pretty unique fights. Minish Cap had similar ideas, though sometimes they were just mobs of enemies. Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, I think they were usually unique, or the first time you fought certain enemies. This game's kind of bare in that regard. With that said, now we need to play the Scarecrow song, and it needs to be particularly right next to the door so we can get Pierre to show up there. With that said, if you're going for 100%, this is only barely required, as there's a chest up here we can get that you can't get otherwise, as well as one of the dungeon's gold Skulltulas is up here. So if you've already gotten 50 Skulltulas and you don't feel like getting the rest of them, you're just going for all heart pieces, this is not a required pathway in any regard. And even then, the chest we get isn't even that important. It's not a small key, it's not anything important, it's just money. And don't get me wrong, there still might be some times you need some serious money moving forward, especially if you want to like max out your ammo count, you're low, and you just want to buy it rather than finding it. But not to my taste. And there's the gold Skulltula. Actually, is there 2 up here? There might be 2 up here. I might be thinking of the next place, though. There's 3 or 4 rooms in this area, in this dungeon, rather. I always get confused with each other. No, there's just 2. Because there's just 2 rooms that look exactly the same because of the 2-pillar setup. Alright, as for what this room is, you may have seen there was a floor switch up there. On the top of this giant cliff, there is a chest we need to reach. And to reach that, you need to get to the end before the timer goes out. And the timer is relatively strict before the fire comes back. You need to precisely hookshot up to there and be careful of that steep hill, because if you stop moving on it or walk up it too far, you slide back down. The timing there is pretty strict, but it's nothing too worrisome because it's just 200 rupees. It's not that money is pointless moving forward. There's still going to be some mini games you might repeat over and over again that cost it, but there's never anything we invest in as much as the magic beans ever again. And by falling down here, we find ourselves back in this room, and I almost fell back down to the bottom floor. Oh god, that would have sucked. And now we're back in the moving fire room, but now that we have those 2 keys from the rolling rock room, you may have noticed there was a door right up there towards the top right of the screen. We want to get up to there. Previous playthroughs, I always just went back to the far side and then came back around, but I've learned as of this playthrough, you can just ignore that and jump up here and ignore the fire, because once you've grabbed on, I think you're out of the fire's hitbox. Yeah, you're safe. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 21, we're going to be continuing on and I believe finishing the Fire Temple. See you guys then.